I used to tell people I had a good life. Not a flashy life, nobody would mistake me for someone who made it on Instagram, but a solid, dependable life. A house with a small yard, 2 cars in the driveway, a routine that smelled like coffee and laundry and soccer practice. I'm Ryan Mitchell. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm 42 now. I work as a mechanical engineer for a small firm downtown. For most of the last 17 years, I thought my wife, Emily, and I were building the same thing, a life that was safe enough to breathe in. We met in college, not some cinematic meet-cute. She sat behind me in thermodynamics and corrected my notes when I dozed off. She had this laugh that made other people laugh, too, easy and loud and real. After a couple years of dating and a messy, self-funded, sunburned wedding, we settled into a rhythm. She ran a boutique marketing agency from our dining room for a while. I put my head down at work. We wanted normal. We wanted kids. We wanted Saturday morning pancakes and not much drama. Sophie came first, then Ethan. The house grew louder and more cluttered and more ours. If you'd asked me then whether I was happy, I would have said yes without thinking. We had dinners where we actually talked. We had chores divided in ways that mostly worked. We had friends who showed up and neighbors who waved. We had plans, small plans, like saving for a kitchen reno or taking the kids to the coast in August. Those plans felt like proof that we were moving forward together. The first crack was so small I didn't notice it at first. It was a missing laugh in the kitchen, something I chalked up to a busy week. Emily started staying late, for a client, then, for 3 clients, then overnight for a big pitch. Her phone, which used to lie face up on the kitchen counter while she answered emails and texted her sister, suddenly became an object of secrecy. She began setting it face down, answering it in the hall, leaving the room when she got a message. At first I told myself the obvious lies we all tell: she's stressed, we're both busy, this is temporary. Then came the little changes in how she looked. Emily has always taken care of herself, but she wasn't the kind of person to obsess over new clothes or skincare routines. She was practical: jeans, a blazer, hair usually in a bun. But one month she started bringing home clothes I'd never seen her wear: slim-cut shirts, cleaner jeans, a cologne that wasn't hers. She started waking up earlier, going for a run before the kids were up. She'd say she wanted to feel better, and I believed it. I wanted to believe it. The honesty I gave myself was conditional. I told myself I was being reasonable, then guilty, then reasonable again. There were moments when I caught myself watching her on the couch, the way she would smile at her phone, and I'd rehearse a good question, casual, not accusatory. Everything okay at work? Big meeting tomorrow? She'd laugh and say, yeah, just a lot on my plate. And because I loved her, because she had always been my person, I let it go. What I didn't know was that she was masterful at normalizing small deceptions. She was good at small talk and better at not telling me things that would make me look for the patterns. If you'd told me that the woman who packed my lunch when I had early shifts, who once stayed up with me one December night when I had a project deadline, could become a stranger in the same house, I would have told you you were wrong. There were these other things, too, the tiny, half-forgotten signposts that now feel like neon lights in hindsight. She started leaving out half-finished conversations, changing topics when I probed, distancing herself from our plans. One Friday night I came home with 2 tickets to a show we used to love. I found her in the kitchen, on the phone, whispering. She said, "Can you just, not tonight," and I laughed it off. We'd been together long enough to dodge fights, or so I thought. I remember the day that started the slow unraveling because it was one of those gray, wet afternoons Portland is famous for. The kids were at school, the house was quiet, and I was in my element: coffee, spreadsheet, the hum of the heater. Emily had a client presentation downtown. She'd left in a hurry and promised she'd be back before lunch. I remember thinking, that's strange but fine. Later, when I drove past the office to pick up an extra printer part, I saw her car in a spot it didn't belong in. a car I knew all too well from the time she dated him years ago. Jake Carter. The name itself was a memory with sharp edges. He'd been the kind of guy who wore his charm like cologne, attractive, messy, exciting in ways that were terrible for married people. Emily always said she and Jake were over because he was too wild, and I believed her. Back then, his name was a casual warning. Now his car sat in a place that made the hairs on my arms rise. I sat in my truck for maybe 3 minutes, then 5, watching through the rain-smeared windshield as the two of them walked out of the building together, talking too close. He slipped an arm around her waist, the kind of move that made the world tilt. They laughed, and I could see the intimacy in how their shoulders matched. I remember the smell of wet asphalt and the echo of my heartbeat as if it were someone else's. I wanted to drive away. I wanted to storm in. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions all at once, and I wanted to do none of those things. So I drove to a hardware store instead, bought nothing, and went home. For a long time after that I floated in a fog, doing the motions of work, of parenthood, of pretending. You learn a lot about how deep denial can be when you're the one doing it. I told myself I'd talk to her that night. I told myself the obvious things: communicate, assume the best, don't make it dramatic. I made a list of calm questions to ask, phrases to use so it wouldn't feel like an ambush. But every plan seemed inadequate because the truth felt too large. That evening, she kissed me at the doorway like nothing had happened. She smelled like the office and rain and something I couldn't name. "How was your day?" she asked, sliding her bag off her shoulder and into our routine like a practiced actor. I wanted to use those detective questions. I wanted to say, "Who was that guy at your meeting?" Instead I mumbled about traffic, opened a beer, and watched our daughter's soccer highlight on my phone to distract myself. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, that confrontation without proof was foolish. I told myself I was protecting our family. Those first chapters of denial are strange in memory because they feel like two different people narrating the same life. One part of me, the part that loved her and was tired and practical, believed the small explanations. The other part, quieter and colder, catalogued the anomalies and grew restless. You don't notice that restlessness until it becomes a steady hum. It's like a mosquito in the room at night. You don't scream, you just know the sound will never stop until you find it. So that's where I was when chapter 1 of our unraveling closed, in a house that still smelled like breakfast, with 2 kids who trusted their mother, and a husband who was learning to separate his questions from his love. I would keep watching for a while. I was going to be careful, not because I wanted to catch her, but because I needed to know whether the life I'd worked for was a believable story or a careful lie. Chapter 2, The Shat. The night everything truly broke wasn't some dramatic movie scene. There wasn't thunder or shouting or shattered glass, just the quiet click of a car door and the weight of certainty settling into my chest. It was a Thursday. I'd just gotten a promotion at work, project lead on a big account, the kind of thing Emily and I used to celebrate with cheap champagne and takeout. I thought surprising her would be nice, like old times. She'd mentioned staying late at the office for a client pitch, so I grabbed her favorite Thai food on the way. I even remember humming in the car, feeling proud, imagining the look on her face when I showed up. Her office was downtown, tucked behind a row of coffee shops and yoga studios. By the time I parked, the sun had already dipped below the skyline. I walked in with the paper bag still warm in my hands, only to find the place dark. Every light was off. The lobby was empty. Maybe she's still upstairs, I muttered to myself. But when I checked the directory, I saw her firm's name, and next to it, a small handwritten sign that read "Closed for renovation, see you Monday." That's when I noticed her car. Parked right across the street, under a flickering lamppost. And next to it, a silver Toyota I recognized instantly. Jake Carter. I froze. My heart started pounding, the takeout bag suddenly too heavy. I could have left. I should have. But instead, I walked closer. I don't even know why, curiosity, instinct, pain, all mixed together. Through the windshield, I saw them. Emily was in the passenger seat, laughing at something Jake said. Her hand was on his arm. His head leaned close, too close, and then he kissed her. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The whole street went silent. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears and the faint squeak of my shoes on the wet pavement. I remember the smell of rain and gasoline. I remember how she tilted her head the same way she used to when she kissed me. I didn't storm over or make a scene. I just turned around. Walked back to my car. When I got in, I sat there for a long time, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't cry, not then. I just felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left an echo. That night, she came home late, just like she said she would. Her lipstick was smudged. She dropped her bag, stretched, and said, "Hey, sorry, crazy night." The presentation went great though. I looked at her, really looked, and forced a smile. "That's good. I'm proud of you." Then I kissed her forehead. It tasted like someone else's cologne. The days that followed blurred together. I stopped sleeping. I'd stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering when she decided I wasn't enough. I still got up, made breakfast, packed the kids' lunches, went to work. Functioning became my new superpower. I started noticing every detail now, every late text, every shower right after she got home, every excuse that didn't quite fit. She wasn't even careful anymore. Maybe she thought I'd never notice. Maybe she didn't care. One Saturday morning, I found a text on her phone when she left it unlocked on the counter. It said, "Jake, I miss waking up next to you. Emily, soon. Just need a little more time." I remember the shaking. My hands, my breath, my whole body. I sat at the kitchen table with that phone in my hands and thought, this is it. This is the moment where my life splits in two. When she came back from her run, I handed her the phone. "You forgot this." She froze. Her eyes darted to the screen, saw the open text thread. There was a long pause. Then she said, softly, "Ryan, it's not what you think." I laughed. It wasn't a normal laugh, more like a sound someone makes when they're trying not to break. "Then what is it, Emily? Are there two Jakes now? Or just the one you've been sneaking around with?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen. You've been distant, I felt alone, and Jake just—" "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't you dare blame me for this." She started crying harder. "I didn't want to hurt you, I swear." "Then why did you?" I asked. "You had a choice, Emily. Every day, you had a choice." The kids were upstairs. I could hear the faint sound of Ethan's video game through the wall, Sophie talking on the phone. So I lowered my voice and said, "We'll talk about this later. When they're not here." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. That night, she slept in the guest room. And for the first time in 17 years, our bed felt like a graveyard. Over the next few weeks, we tried to work things out. She swore she'd cut things off with Jake. She said it was just an emotional mistake, that it was over, that she wanted to fix us. But I could feel it, the lie under every word. One evening, after dinner, she sat me down and said, "Ryan, I don't think this is working. I feel trapped. I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore." I remember staring at the floor, at the little crack in the tile near the fridge, and thinking, that's where it ends. Right there. "So that's it?" I said quietly. 17 years and that's what you have for me?" Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore." A month later, she moved out. She told the kids she was taking time for herself. But I knew where she went, Jake's apartment downtown. When she packed her bags, she didn't take much. Just her clothes, her laptop, and that framed picture of her and the kids from last summer. She left our wedding photo face down on the dresser. Sophie refused to speak to me for weeks. She blamed me. "You pushed Mom away," she said. "Ethan just cried and asked when she'd come home." I wanted to tell them the truth. I wanted to scream it. But I couldn't make their mother the villain in their eyes, not yet. So I swallowed it. All of it. When the door finally closed behind her, I sat on the couch surrounded by half-empty boxes and silence. I stared at the spot where her shoes used to be lined up, the mug she always left on the counter, the dent in the couch where she used to sit. And then I finally cried. Not the kind of cry you can stop, the kind that rips through your chest and leaves you gasping for air. That's when it hit me. The woman I loved wasn't coming back. And the life I thought we built together had never really been ours to begin with. Chapter 3, Picking Up the Pieces. The first few weeks after Emily left were strange. It wasn't just the silence, it was the absence of everything that used to fill the silence. Her perfume lingering in the hallway. The sound of her hair dryer in the morning. The clatter of her coffee mug on the counter. Even her complaining, I missed that, too. At first, I thought I could just power through it. Keep myself busy. Be the rock for the kids. So I cleaned. I cooked. I folded laundry like it was a mission. Anything to fill the hours between sunrise and when the house went quiet again. But no matter how many dishes I washed or how many checklists I made, the loneliness found its way in, slipping through the cracks like cold air on a winter night. It was Sophie who broke first. One morning, she came down late for school, eyes puffy from crying. I was making pancakes, the kind Emily used to make, with blueberries shaped into smiley faces. "Hey, kiddo," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Hungry?" She didn't answer. She just grabbed a bowl of cereal, poured milk over it, and said, "Can we not pretend everything's fine?" The spatula froze in my hand. "I'm not pretending." "Yes, you are." She dropped her spoon into the bowl, milk splashing onto the counter. "Mom's gone. You act like if you keep making pancakes and cleaning the house, she's gonna walk back through that door. She's not." The words hit harder than I expected. She was right. But I wasn't ready to hear it, not from her. "Watch your tone," I said quietly. Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you fight for her, Dad? Why didn't you do something?" And just like that, the anger I'd buried for weeks boiled over. "I did, Sophie. I did everything I could. But when someone decides they're done, there's nothing you can do to stop them." She stared at me for a moment, then grabbed her backpack and stormed out the door. I stood there, pancakes burning on the pan, listening to the sound of the front door slam. That's when Ethan came down the stairs, rubbing his eyes. "Is Mom mad at us?" I knelt beside him, pulling him into a hug. "No, buddy. She's not mad. She just needs some time." He nodded, too young to understand, too innocent to see the cracks that were splitting our family apart. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stand the quiet. That's when I saw her. Emily. Someone had tagged her in a photo, a dinner party. She was laughing, holding a glass of wine. And next to her, Jake. His hand on her waist. The caption read, "Love always finds a way." I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the unfollow button, but I couldn't do it. I just kept scrolling, like a man picking at a wound he refuses to let heal. Part of me wanted to hate her. But another part, the part that still remembered our wedding day, the smell of her hair when she hugged me, the way she said, "Ryan," like it was a promise, that part still loved her. It was pathetic. I knew that. But grief doesn't follow logic. It follows memory. 2 weeks later, I ran into her at the grocery store. I'd taken Ethan to grab some snacks for his soccer game, and there she was, in the produce aisle, wearing the same blue jacket I'd bought her last Christmas. "Hey," she said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you here." I forced a polite smile. "Yeah, I live 5 minutes away, remember?" She laughed awkwardly. "Right." Ethan spotted her and ran over. "Mom!" He threw his arms around her, and she knelt to hug him tight. I saw her eyes glisten when she looked up at me. "How have you been?" she asked softly. "Fine," I lied. Then Jake appeared, holding a basket. "Hey, M.O." His expression shifted when he saw me. I nodded at him. "Jake." He smiled that smug, too confident smile. "Ryan. Good to see you." Ethan looked between us, confused. "Are you guys friends?" Emily froze. Jake chuckled. "Not exactly, champ." I clenched my jaw. "We used to be," I said. Then I took Ethan's hand and walked away. That was the last time I saw her for months. After that day, something in me started to change. The pain didn't vanish, but it dulled, turned into something quieter. Something I could carry without breaking every time I saw her face in my mind. I started focusing on myself. I joined a gym. Went hiking again. Even took a woodworking class at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making her regret leaving. It was about remembering who I was before I became half of a broken marriage. And slowly, things got better. Sophie began talking to me again, cautiously at first, then more often. One night, she came into the kitchen while I was making dinner and said, "Can I help?" We cooked in silence for a while, until she said, "I'm sorry for what I said that morning." I smiled. Me too. I wasn't listening. I was just surviving. She nodded, eyes glistening. "It's okay, Dad. I miss her too." I reached out, squeezed her hand. "We'll be okay, kiddo. One day at a time." The turning point came 6 months later. Ethan's soccer team made it to the finals, and the game was a big deal. All the parents showed up. I saw Emily sitting across the bleachers, Jake beside her. She waved awkwardly. I waved back. When Ethan scored the winning goal, he ran to me first, not her. He jumped into my arms, shouting, "We did it, Dad." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something real, joy. Not the kind that hides behind a mask or needs someone else's approval. Just, pure, unfiltered happiness. Later, as the crowd began to thin out, Emily walked over. "He's growing up so fast," she said quietly. "Yeah," I replied. "He is." There was a long pause. Then she looked down and said, "You seem different. Happier." "I am," I said. I had to be. For them. For me. She smiled faintly. "I'm glad." Then she turned to leave, and for the first time, I didn't feel that ache in my chest. I didn't feel the pull to chase after her or the bitterness that used to follow her name. All I felt was peace. That night, I tucked Ethan into bed and checked on Sophie, who was scrolling through her phone. She looked up and said, "Dad?" "Yeah. Are you okay?" I thought for a second, then smiled. "Yeah. I think I am." When I went downstairs, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat by the window. Outside, the rain tapped gently against the glass, the same sound that once made me feel so alone. Now, it felt comforting. Familiar. Like the world was saying, "You made it through." I looked around the house, the pictures on the wall, the laughter that was slowly returning, the quiet strength that had taken root. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. And that, I realized, was enough. Chapter 4, When Karma Knocks. 2 years later. Life has a funny way of moving on, quietly, without asking if you're ready. I'd settled into something I never thought I'd have again, peace. The kids were doing well. Sophie had just started college at Oregon State, and Ethan was taller than me now, with that same stubborn grin I used to see in the mirror. Work was steady. I'd gotten promoted again. The house felt different, lighter, warmer. Most nights, I'd cook dinner, listen to music, maybe watch a game. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. And Emily? She was a ghost. I hadn't seen her in almost a year, not since Sophie's high school graduation. She'd shown up late, alone, and looked tired. There were lines under her eyes, her smile forced. I'd heard rumors. People talk in small cities like Portland. Rumors that Jake had lost his job at the real estate firm. Rumors that he'd started gambling. Rumors that Emily was covering rent while he figured things out. I didn't care to confirm them. I'd stopped checking her social media a long time ago. But sometimes, late at night, curiosity crept in. I'd type her name, just to see. That's when I saw it. A post from her profile, set to public. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. The caption was short. But the photo, that said everything. She was standing alone in an empty apartment, holding a box. No ring on her finger. A week later, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in forever. Emily. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Hello. Her voice was soft, almost breaking. Ryan, hi. Emily. Can we talk? There was a long pause. I could have said no. I should have said no. But something in her voice, that same quiver I'd heard the night she left, made me agree. We met at a small cafe near downtown. She looked different, thinner, older. The glow she once had was gone, replaced by exhaustion and regret. Thanks for meeting me, she said, stirring her coffee even though she hadn't added sugar. I nodded. What's going on? She took a shaky breath. Jake left. He's gone. He drained my savings, Ryan. Everything I had. I sat back, the words sinking in. I'm sorry to hear that. She gave a small, bitter laugh. No, you're not. I didn't argue. She looked up, tears glistening. I was so stupid. I thought he loved me. He said everything I wanted to hear. And when he couldn't use me anymore, he just disappeared. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then I remembered standing in the rain, watching her kiss him in that car. I remembered the way she looked at me and said, I'm not in love with you anymore. So I said, quietly, we all make choices, Emily. Her eyes filled with tears. I know. And I chose wrong. Every day, I regret it. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. Don't, I said softly. You made your bed. She nodded, looking down. You're right. I just needed to tell you. I'm sorry, Ryan. For everything. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. All I could think was how karma has perfect timing. A month later, karma came back again, louder this time. Sophie called one night, crying. Dad. Mom's in the hospital. My stomach dropped. What happened? She got in a car accident. Drunk driver. They said she's okay, but she broke her leg and, Sophie's voice cracked. She doesn't have anyone else to help her. I sighed. I'll be there. When I walked into the hospital room, she looked small. Fragile. Her hair was messy, her leg in a cast, 4 tubes running up her arm. She smiled weakly. You didn't have to come. I know, I said. But I'm not heartless. She chuckled softly. You never were. We talked for a while, about the kids, the weather, her recovery. But beneath it all, there was something heavier, something unspoken. Finally, she said it. Ryan, do you think I deserve this? I looked at her, really looked. Honestly? Maybe not this, I said, gesturing to her leg. But the rest? Yeah. You played with fire. It burned you. She wiped her eyes. I just wanted to feel loved again. You were, I said. You just didn't recognize it. The room went quiet. The heart monitor beeped steadily in the background. Then she whispered, do you ever think you could forgive me? I didn't answer right away. I stood, looked out the window at the rain streaking down the glass, the same sound from 2 years ago, when I sat alone wondering why she'd left. Finally, I turned back. I already did, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. It means I'm free. Her face crumpled, tears spilling down. I lost everything, Ryan. I nodded. No, I said gently. You just lost what wasn't real. And with that, I walked out of the room, not out of anger, but peace. Real, earned peace. 2 months later, Emily moved to Seattle to live with her sister. We kept things civil for the kids, but our conversations were short, polite, distant. One night, Sophie called me after visiting her. Dad. Mom's different now. She's working 2 jobs, trying to get back on her feet. She said you were right about everything. I smiled faintly. Good. Maybe that's what she needed. Do you hate her? Sophie asked. I thought for a long moment. No, I said. I don't hate her. But I don't love her either. Not anymore. And I meant it. A year after that, something unexpected happened. I was at a local community fundraiser, one of those charity events for the youth center. A woman bumped into me near the coffee table. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, she said, laughing. She had warm eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun. Guess I should watch where I'm going. No harm done, I said, smiling. Coffee's still intact. We're good. We talked. Her name was Claire. She worked at the local library, volunteered with kids on weekends. We ended up talking for hours. When I walked her to her car, she smiled and said, you know, it's been a long time since I met someone who actually listens. I laughed. It's been a long time since I met someone worth listening to. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't go home to silence, I went home with hope. Months passed. Claire and I grew closer. The kids adored her. Life wasn't perfect, but it felt right. Then one afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Emily. I'm glad you're happy, Ryan. You deserve it. I just wish I'd realized what I had before I lost it. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. We all learn eventually. Take care of yourself. And that was it. The final chapter of a story that had already ended long ago. That night, Claire and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, you ever think about the past? Sometimes, I said. But I don't live there anymore. She smiled. Good. I looked out at the fading light, the kids laughing inside, and thought about everything I'd lost, and everything I'd gained. Emily's betrayal had once felt like the end of my life. Now, I realized it was just the beginning of a better one. Because sometimes, karma doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to free you. Chapter 5, Full Circle. 3 years after Emily walked out, life had completely changed. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet rhythm of mornings that made sense again. The house was full of life now. Claire's laughter echoed from the kitchen as she teased Ethan about his haircut. Sophie was home from college for the weekend, helping her little brother with homework. The smell of cinnamon rolls filled the air, the same kind Emily used to bake, except now, they didn't taste like guilt. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching sunlight spill across the backyard. It was the same view I'd looked at 1,000 times before, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a reminder of loss. It felt like home. Sometimes, I still thought about Emily. Not with anger, just curiosity. Where she was now, whether she'd found peace. Sophie still visited her occasionally. Once in a while, she'd mention something, that her mom was working at a small bookstore in Seattle, renting a small apartment, slowly rebuilding her life. She's different now, Sophie said one day. She doesn't talk about Jake. Ever. She just says she wishes she could have been better. I nodded, not really knowing what to say. We all wish that, at some point. There was a pause. Then Sophie looked at me and said, "I'm proud of you, Dad." That hit harder than I expected. For what? For not letting it destroy you, she said softly. Most people would've. But you didn't. I smiled, swallowing the lump in my throat. I almost did, kiddo. But then I realized, she took enough from me. I wasn't going to let her take everything. Sophie hugged me tight, and in that moment, I felt something close to closure. A few months later, it happened, one of those strange, full-circle moments life throws at you when you least expect it. I was at a charity gala for the community center, same one where I'd first met Claire. I'd just finished giving a short speech about second chances and mentorship when I saw her. Emily. She stood near the back of the room, dressed simply in a navy blouse, her hair tied back. There were faint scars on her wrist, maybe from the accident, and lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. When our eyes met, she smiled nervously and approached. "Ryan," she said softly. "You look happy." "I am," I said. She nodded, glancing at Claire, who was talking with some guests across the room. "She seems lovely." "She is," I said. "She's kind. Real." Emily looked down, her voice trembling. "You deserve that." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The music hummed softly in the background, people chatting and laughing around us, the kind of normal noise that makes pain feel smaller. Then she said, "You know, I used to think you'd hate me forever." I shook my head. I did. For a while. But hate's heavy, Emily. I got tired of carrying it. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant to destroy everything. I just wanted to feel alive again. I sighed. You could've, with me. You just didn't see it. She bit her lip, trying to hold back tears. I know. And I'll live with that for the rest of my life. Then she straightened up a little. I just wanted to say thank you, for still being good to the kids. For not turning them against me. They deserve both their parents, I said simply. She smiled weakly. You turned out stronger than I ever imagined. I looked her in the eye and said, no. I just finally stopped bleeding. Later that night, after the event ended, Claire and I walked out to the parking lot under a sky scattered with stars. She slipped her hand into mine. That woman, she's your ex-wife, isn't she? Yeah, I said. She looked like she's been through hell. She has, I replied quietly. But sometimes, that's what it takes for people to find themselves again. Claire smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. You handled that better than most people would. I chuckled softly. I've had enough practice with pain. These days, I choose peace instead. We stood there for a moment, watching our breath fade in the cool night air. Then she whispered, you know what I love about you? What? You don't just survive things. You grow through them. I smiled. Guess I learned from the best teacher, heartbreak. Months passed. Seasons changed. Life kept moving. Sophie graduated, Ethan started college, and the house grew quieter again, but not lonely this time. Just calm. One evening, I found an old box while cleaning the attic. Inside were photos from years ago, our wedding, the kids when they were little, vacations, Christmas mornings. And tucked in the bottom, a letter. It was in Emily's handwriting. Dated nearly a year ago. Ryan. I know I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness. But I want you to know that leaving you was the worst mistake of my life. Not because I lost comfort, but because I lost the only person who ever truly loved me. If karma is real, and I believe it is, then losing you was mine. Take care of yourself, and thank you for teaching me what real love looks like, even when I didn't deserve it. Emily. I read it twice. Then I folded it, placed it back in the box, and closed the lid. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need it anymore. The apology came too late, but the peace was already mine. A few weeks later, Claire and I stood on the same beach where I'd proposed to her earlier that year. The waves rolled gently onto the shore, the sun dipping below the horizon. She turned to me and said, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if she hadn't left?" I smiled faintly. Sometimes. But then I realize, if she hadn't, I wouldn't be here. With you. She took my hand, her eyes glimmering. So, thank her, in a way. I laughed softly. Maybe I already have. We stood there in silence, watching the tide wash the footprints from the sand, a perfect metaphor for how time erases pain, if you let it. Narrator's reflection, for voiceover close. They say karma doesn't forget an address. But maybe it's not about punishment. Maybe it's about lessons. Emily's karma wasn't losing me, it was realizing too late what she'd thrown away. My karma wasn't her betrayal, it was the strength I gained from surviving it. In the end, we both got what we deserved. She got her silence. And I got my peace.